Good morning, everybody. Now, for today's training, I will be providing some information on some federal programs that we work with as an organization that were intended to help prospective students fund their academic goals. These programs include the Teacher Loan Forgiveness Program, the Teach Grant, and the Public Service Loan Forgiveness. So before we get into it, I want to give a quick disclaimer to reiterate what our role is in this process. We are not the government. Therefore, we do not have the ability to guarantee eligibility at any of these programs. Our role is to help clients understand what options are even out there and what programs they may qualify for given their employment. They would want to connect with either their lender or the necessary government agency to confirm eligibility for everything that we're covering. So, with that said, let's get into it. The first program we're going to talk about today is Teacher Loan Forgiveness. As you can see on the screen, this is the main web page that talks about the program. I'm not going to go through this entire thing, but I wanted you to see the URL affiliated with it, and the key part being the Federal Student Aid logo at the upper left. This is something that is credible. It's not some third-party company that's trying to explain it. This is a government website. So back to the program. It was created in 1998 and offers a forgiveness amount for full-time, highly qualified educators who happen to be teaching in a low-income or Title I school for 5 consecutive years. Now, the term highly qualified is defined as holding at least a bachelor's degree and being currently licensed in the state that you're conducting the teaching in. The term low income is defined as any school that has 30% or more of the student body participating in a free and reduced lunch program. There's actually a federal website that I'll take you to now, known as the Teacher Cancellation Low Income Directory. This is the same website that lenders will go to determine eligibility. So if a teacher or one of your clients is unsure whether or not their employer qualifies, you can direct them to this website. But they can go in, click on the search button, at which point it will ask them to choose a state. Let's just do an example real quick. Let's go with Arizona. The current year, the 2017-18, has not updated on this yet, so we have to go with the year prior. We're not going to find anything. Let's just use a school that I know works. Let's try Gilbert. Hit search. It's going to pull up a list of Gilbert Elementary School and Gilbert Junior. So both of these schools are classified as low income. You'll notice that Gilbert High School is not. So as of the 2016-17 academic year, employees of the junior high and the elementary can potentially get this program, but the employees of Gilbert High School may not. So back to the program. The 5-year period for which you're using to qualify does not have to be at the same school, but it does have to be consecutive. Meaning if you were at 5 different schools, all of which are considered low income, then you can potentially qualify for the program. But if you leave this one low income school and seek employment somewhere that is not, it resets your 5 years. So changing topics to the forgiveness amount. The amount is based on the subject that is taught over that 5-year span. It's one of 2 tiers. They can either qualify for $5,000 or they can qualify for $17,500. Now, the only way to get the higher tier is by teaching in secondary math, secondary science, or K through 12 special ed. All other subjects can still potentially get the program, but they will be going after the lowered amount, the $5,000. So some additional requirements of the program is that the loans for which you're seeking forgiveness on had to have been federal. And that by federal I mean received through your FAFSA. Private loans do not qualify for the program. In addition, candidates cannot have any outstanding loans that were dispersed prior to October 1st of 1998 when the program was created. If they do, then none of the candidates' loans would be eligible for this program. In an example, let's say a candidate would have to pay off all of their pre-1998 loans, and then they can take out new loans and potentially qualify for this program. In addition to this, the loans for which you're seeking forgiveness on had to have been taken out during or before the end of the 5 years that you're using to qualify. This means that candidates cannot teach for 5 years, go quit their job, and expect to qualify for the program. So you may ask, why do we talk about this? Our job is to help enroll for higher education. Besides helping people with their existing student loan balance, this program can also help with future education. Let's say for prospective students that have little or zero student loan debt, they can look at this program as a way to help pay for future graduate degrees. An example would be if you have a high school math teacher with no student loans and 10 plus years working in this area, in this field. This person is likely eligible for the higher tier, the $17,500 in forgiveness. They just don't have the loans to be forgiven. So if they were wanting to pursue a master's degree, they could enroll with a particular university of their choice, rely on federal financial aid to pay for it, stay on deferment for the duration of their graduate degree, and then after they finish, they could go through the necessary application steps to apply for it, which are filling out the form, getting your principal to sign off on it, and then contacting your lender, whoever is holding your balance, to determine the appropriate method for submittal. Usually within 90 days is when you'll get a response back. So keep in mind, this is a lot of information to digest in one sitting. This is going to take weeks of practice, if not months of practice, before you become very familiar with this. But the purpose of today's training is to give you a general idea of how each program works. So feel free to write down any notes as we're going through this, some follow-up questions that you have. At the end of this, we're going to have an interactive discussion covering what areas you need clarification on. So the next program I want to get into is the Teach Grant. Now that we have a foundation on the loan forgiveness program, I want to explain how this program relates to it and how it has some distinct differences. Rather than providing forgiveness after so many years teaching, the grant will front up to $4,000 per year to help offset the tuition costs from eligible bachelor and master's degrees. The grant comes with a commitment to serve upon completion of the degree, where the candidate would have to promise the Department of Education that they will either continue to teach or become employed in a low-income school as a full-time licensed teacher and teaching in one of the federal or state high-needs areas for at least 4 years within an 8-year window after completion of the program. Failure to meet these requirements will convert the grant into a direct unsubsidized loan with retroactive interest accruing from the disbursement date. I want to take a quick minute to change the website so you can see the Teach Grant source. Bear with me. So this is the homepage for the Teach Grant. It'll cover a lot of FAQs, what it is, who can get it. So this is another website for you guys to bookmark for future reference. It's something that I rely on daily, and I've been working with these programs for going on 7 years now. So also the Department of Education will change requirements and the funding amounts at various times of the year. So it's good to stay familiar with the content that's on here. So back to the grant. I mentioned earlier that you have to teach in federal high needs areas. These areas consist of secondary math, secondary science, reading and literacy, foreign language, ESL, or special education. In addition to that, states will annually provide a list of other subject matters or even geographical areas that are considered in demand or a nationwide shortage area. Candidates can either satisfy the Teach Grant commitment to serve by teaching one of the federal areas we mentioned, or by checking with their state to see if the subject or the geographical area falls within what the state considers a shortage or high demand. Now, not every university offers the grant. In fact, only select schools do, and it's only eligible for bachelor's and master's degrees. Now, This varies, but normally the degree type will have to correlate to a federal high-need subject that we previously mentioned. In other words, it's challenging to find a degree in administration that's also Teach Grant eligible, because the program and the Teach Grant are kind of working against each other, where the administrative degree is designed to get you out of the classroom, whereas the Teach Grant is designed to keep you in for at least 4 more years after you're done. The wonderful part with our organization is that we partner with universities throughout the country. Our job is to assist prospective students in finding programs that are Teach Grant eligible that also fits with their career goals. In many cases, you'll have conversations with students that may want to use both the Teach Grant and the Teacher Loan Forgiveness Program and combine them. If they are able to do this successfully, they can get, let's say, up to $8,000 for a master's because it's $4,000 per year. And then let's say they're a math teacher in that previous example where they qualify for $17,500. You add the two up, they have about $25,000 worth of funding towards certain master's degrees that are classified as Teach Grant eligible. That should more than cover any costs associated with most universities out there. Okay, so the last program I want to get into today is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. This one's going to probably take the most amount of time to become familiar with because there's a lot of moving parts with it. I'll take you to the website before we get into it. So here we are. So taking this from the top, this program was created in 2007, and it was meant for any U.S. citizen that happens to be working full-time in a nonprofit position. So this means that teachers, administrators, city and government officials, military, law enforcement, healthcare, plus thousands of other examples can potentially benefit from it. The way it works is candidates are placed on reduced income-driven repayment plans, and these repayment plans are capped at 120 payments, which if you do it consecutively, it will take you 10 years to complete. During that duration, they would have to commit to working full-time in one of these nonprofit roles out there. Afterwards, the remaining student loans are forgiven in full, and that includes any interest that will have accumulated on it. Another benefit is that whatever that forgiveness amount is not classified as taxable income. It's classified as an exchange for service. So ideally, this program is meant for candidates that already have a pretty healthy or substantial student loan balance and a modest to low income level, because again, these are income-driven repayment plans. For those that owe less than $10,000 or $15,000 in loans, the forgiveness amount on the back end is probably going to be minimal or non-existent. Also, candidates that are making well over 6 figures a year, they also won't benefit from it as much because the payments are based on your income. The whole purpose of it is to really pay as little as possible while working full-time for the next 120 months with the expectation that the government would forgive the remaining amount. Now, the program was created to not only help nonprofit employees manage their loan balance, but it was also created to help them go as far as they need to academically without stressing as much about the financial component. Given that payments are updated every year based on their income, whether the client owes $20,000 in loans or $100,000 in loans, the payments should ideally be the same. Putting this into example, I want to take you through a scenario that you'll often encounter, especially when dealing with licensed teachers, especially in the beginning part of their career. There's a federal website that I like to go to get an idea of what the potential monthly payments would be under this program. The easiest way for me to get there is through Google and looking for the ones that have studentloans.gov listed. Let's wait for it to load. So here is a calculator website issued by this federal student aid website. It basically allows candidates to either log in and it will pre-populate their student loans for them, or they can create hypothetical scenarios by hitting on proceed here to find out what types of payments they would be dealing with. So let's try to apply the public service program into a real example. Let's pretend we have a teacher that owes currently about $25,000 in loans. Let's say it's at a 6.0 interest rate. This will give us a pretend loan right here for 25 grand at 6.0. Let's assume this person's single. Let's change it. Let's say she's married. It's a single mother with 2 children. So let's go to head of household. For section 3, it asks about income. Your adjusted gross here is somewhere in between your gross income and your take-home pay. You can actually click on the link and we'll give you a little definition. So for the sake of this, let's ballpark it. For an educator in her first year, let's say making 45 grand a year before tax, let's round it down to 40 for the sake of this. I mentioned that she has 2 kids, so let's make the family size 3. State of residence, we'll go ahead and leave as Alabama. They would want to check the box here that says show payment estimates under public service loan forgiveness and click on calculate results. It's going to provide a list of repayment plans that a person in this particular scenario could choose from. You'll see the standard 10-year has a payment of about $278 a month. It's designed to pay off this person's entire balance over the next decade. I mentioned they have $25,000 in loans, but if you look at the total amount paid is $33,000. That's because of that 6% interest we were talking about. The payment plans on here that I want you to focus on are the bottom 5, right here. These are all the income-driven options that are eligible for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. You can see that most of them, if not all of them, are significantly lower than the standard 10-year repayment plan. The cheapest one I could find was $78. So some of the other information on this website is a little bit, I want to say, inaccurate because they make some assumptions. You can see above where it says what assumptions do we make. Like let's say the second column of last monthly payment being higher than the first column. The reason they have this is they predict that public service employees will get an annual 4% increase on their salary, and they try to estimate what you will be paying towards the end of your repayment period. So unfortunately, that's not always the case for educators. The 4% annual raise would be nice, but it's not as common as we would hope. The point of this is if your income stays consistent, as what we plugged in up top right here for your income, this first column won't change. So let's do an example. Let's say a teacher continues to average making 45 grand a year before tax, 40,000 a year on their adjusted gross with a family size of 3, and they get on revised pay as you earn for $78 a month. Let's do some math here. $78 a month times 120 payments, which is the duration of this forgiveness program. That means they'll be paying back approximately $9,360 out of the $25,000 principal balance that they started with. So that means that there's a difference of about, do the math on that, about 15 grand plus all the interest. So the student in this example would be getting upwards of $20,000 forgiven on the back end. They'd be paying back less than a third of what they would otherwise. Hope this is making sense, and we'll have a review session after this. Where this gets interesting is relating to going back to school. Let's take this same scenario and let's pretend that this person wanted to go pursue a master's. They currently owe $25,000 in loans. Let's pretend that their degree program is going to cost them another $20,000. So let's change the scenario. Let's add a loan. Let's add another $20,000. We'll do the same interest rate. We'll add it. Now this person has a total of $45,000 in loans. Let's assume nothing else changes. You know what, let's add some salary to it, because getting a master's will usually lead to some type of pay scale increase. So let's add 5 grand to it. Hit calculate. Let's look at some numbers again. You will see that the standard repayment skyrocketed and more than doubled, or almost doubled. They'd be paying $500 a month, close to $60,000 over 10 years when you take interest into account. But if you look at the revised pay, it went up a little bit, but nowhere close to what it did on the standard. Instead of the 78 or whatever it was, now it's 120. And this is, again, nothing to do with the student loans nearly doubling. It only went up about $30 because we added the $5,000 on their annual income. If we change this back to 40, hit calculate, it's back down to its same 78, despite the fact that the loan balance has doubled. So the point of this is in this example, whether this teacher decides to go back to school or not, they're going to make 10 years of payments based on their income, equating to about $9,000 and change, is what we had earlier, $9,360. If they do go get a master's and their income stays relatively consistent, they'll still pay the same $93.60. The only difference is there's a much higher forgiveness amount. You can see from the chart there's quite a bit. Public service loan forgiveness, it has $47,000 and change. This isn't accurate, again, because of the second column here where it shows last monthly payment, but there's a lot more forgiveness on the back end under it. So some things that keep in mind with this program, there's some drawbacks to it. Besides the expectation that the government will keep it around for 10 years, there's some other risks and drawbacks, especially when it comes to going back to school. Let's say a candidate gets on the program today, starts making reduced payments based on their income, and 5 years from now they decide they want to go take out more loans and use it for this program. They can do that. However, they will be creating a brand new 120 payment cycle that are tied to these new loans that they will be taking out 5 years from now. It doesn't reset the clock on all the payments they made up to that time, but they're going to have two separate tracks now of qualifying payments where they'll be paying on it essentially for 15 to 17 years rather than just the 10. Because if they make 5 years of payments, go borrow loans, they have to go 10 years from those new loans, which after they graduate that degree, so now they're paying on it a lot longer. So they're paying the $78 a month in this example a lot longer. So to be financially efficient with it, you kind of want to focus on your academic goals and try to minimize what you're paying back on your balance until you reach the point where you're done borrowing. That way you can lump it all together, make 120 payments based on your income while working full-time for a nonprofit, and maximize your forgiveness on the back end. So I know there is a ton to this program in particular, and not to mention everything we covered with the Teach Grant and the teacher loan forgiveness. This is going to take a lot of time to digest. I understand that, and you should too. Just soak it in as we go through this each day. I want to now engage in a little open discussion about the three programs that we covered and see how we can exercise them and how we can discuss them in a practical use, and just to see what you guys have retained from it. So let's get into it.